we met face to face, right? And before that, we've got to talk about chapter 46, verse 3 is where it's plain that God said that in the land of Egypt is where they will become what? A nation, right? And so then it goes on. God tells Jacob to go on. They go to Egypt. Him and Joseph meet, and it was had a pretty good time, right? And so now we're here in 47. I'm gonna read a few verses, and then we'll hit a few things here, okay? I didn't have time to write down my notes, so you'll just have to bear with me. Anyway, so it says, Then Joseph came and told Pharaoh and said, My father and my brethren and their flocks and their herds and all that they have are come out of the land of Canaan. And behold, they are in the land of Goshen. And he took some of his brethren, even 5 men, and presented them unto Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said unto his brethren, What is your occupation? And they said unto Pharaoh, Thy servants are shepherds, both we and also our fathers. Now, if you remember at the end of 46, that's what Joseph told them to say, okay? He told them to say, he says, I'm going to tell Pharaoh that y'all are shepherds, right? That y'all take care of the cattle, y'all take care of the flocks. And what was the purpose of that? Because, well, it's just the sovereignty of God. Basically, what was the purpose of that? Well, it says at the end that the Egyptians are what? That they thought shepherds were abominable. You know, they thought that was just, they was low, right? And so they prepared a place for them in Goshen, which was outside of where Pharaoh and all these people were at, right? So what's happened here? Just like today, even with us as the bride of Christ, he separates us from the world, doesn't he? And so that is what's taking place here. God is separating them from Egypt. Okay? So here he is. He's telling this to Pharaoh. Or they are now. Okay? Verse 4. They said, Moreover unto Pharaoh, for to sojourn in the land are we come. For thy servants have no pasture for their flocks. For the famine is sore in the land of Canaan. Now therefore, now listen, I should have thrown this in there too. Don't think I'm telling you that they're lying here. We all know that they kept flocks and things, okay? But Joseph made sure that they told this so they could be separate, okay? Now therefore we pray thee, let thy servants dwell in the land of Goshen. And Pharaoh spake unto Joseph, saying, Thy father and thy brethren are coming to thee. The land of Egypt is before thee. In the best of the land make thy father and brother to dwell. And the land of Goshen, let them dwell. And if thou knowest any men of activity among them, then make them rulers over my cattle. Okay? So, here it is. He's saying the land of Goshen, it was a good place for their livestock, right? There was plenty of water, there was plenty of grass, there was plenty of everything, okay? And not only that, Pharaoh throws in there at the end, if there's any of them capable, what? Take care of his stuff too, right? And so, when we look at these first 7 verses, we look, actually even the end of 46, we see how God has moved them, Jacob and his family into Egypt. We see how here they are, they're set up in the land, they get the best of the land right off the bat, right? They're being taken care of, right? And so what are we seeing here? Just like I've already stated, it's the sovereignty of God. What? Keeping this nation, right? They're forming a nation, keeping them, his people, separate, right? Why? Because down the road, somebody's going to come out of this nation, right? And then what's that? That goes back to Abraham. When Abraham, he told him, he said, you're going to be a great nation, right? He said all these wonderful things to Abraham. He promised him land. He promised him all this, right? And then that promise kept passing down and passing down. And so we know eventually Christ comes from this group of people, right? Now, which is kind of cool if you look at it, because it's really a nation being born what? Inside of a nation. The nation of Egypt, right? So, anyway, but it's all, they're going to be protected and growing, and it's all part of God's plan, okay? Let's read a few more verses here. And Joseph brought unto Jacob, and Joseph brought in Jacob, his father, and set him before Pharaoh, and Jacob blessed Pharaoh. I always like that part right there. Here he brings him to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh is the most powerful man in the country right here, ain't he? And Jacob blesses him, right? He gives him a blessing. You know, that just shows what? God's authority is God's authority, isn't it? No matter where you go, right? And so he gives him a blessing. And verse 8, and then Pharaoh said unto Jacob, how old art thou? A good thing he wasn't a woman, ain't it? Or he'd been upset. And Jacob said unto Pharaoh, the days of the years of my pilgrimage are 130 years old. Few and evil have the days of the years of my life been, and have not attained into the days of the years of the life of my fathers and the days of their pilgrimage. And here it is again. And Jacob blessed Pharaoh and went out from before him. He told him he's 130 years old. That's pretty old, right? Really and truly, it's not as old as some of his family members have lived, who had it, right? But anyway, so let's look at this, what he just said here. He said, and Jacob said unto Pharaoh, the days of the years of my pilgrimage are 130 years. And then look at what he says. Few and evil have the days of the years of my life been. Okay? Now, he's not really saying anything bad here. Okay? He's not really meaning this evil as you and I would take him saying evil here, okay? He's just saying there's been a lot of trouble. There's been a lot of calamity. There's been a lot of things go on. And there had been a lot in Jacob's life, hadn't he? Right? He wound up running from his brother. He wound up going and living with his uncle, right? And his uncle took advantage of him for years, didn't he? And then he comes out and he's just been trouble upon trouble, right? He's just had all these, but listen, he said few and full of evil. But listen what he's saying. He's not saying that as a bad thing. He's really saying basically God has taken care of me through all. And he hadn't he? Here all these years, he thought his youngest son, his favorite, one of his favorite, from his favorite wife, was dead all those years, right? And so through it all, God has still taken care of Jacob, and here he is blessing him, right? Towards the end of his life, he is getting another blessing, getting it, right? So, does anybody got anything they'd like to say before we go on? Or ask? No. Okay. Verse 11. And Joseph placed his father and his brethren and gave them a possession in the land of Egypt, in the best of the land, in the land of Ramesses, as Pharaoh had commanded. And Joseph nourished his father and his brethren and all his father's household with bread according to their families. Here it is. They was living in famine, and they're still living in famine, right? But look at how God has provided. They got the best piece of land, right? Not only that, here is their brother, and he is taking care of all of them. Ain't that what we just read? Yeah. Here they are, God's people, try to get a picture of this. Here they are, God's people. They're in a land that before God told them not to even be a part, go into this property, go into this land, right? Told them to stay away from there. They're supposed to stay in Canaan. But then he says, you go down to Egypt, Jacob. He said, and I'll be with you. Right? And so what's the big picture here? Here they are, God's people. They're in a Gentile nation. And God is providing. He's using these Gentiles to provide for his people. Ain't that amazing? He's using these people that aren't his to provide, right? I still think God does that today with us. I still think he uses people at times to take care of us, to help us, right? Yes. So at the time, we may not even realize it, right? But later on down the road, you can think back on things and say, you know what? That was God. God was using them to help me, right? And I'm not just talking financially. I'm not just talking that. I'm talking about encouraging. I'm talking about every aspect of our Christian walk. God can use somebody to help us out, right? Amen. Has anybody got anything they'd like to say there? So, here we are. They're in there, and they begin to prosper during all this famine, okay? So now, what are we seeing? We're seeing the early stages of the nation of Israel forming. Right here. This is where the nation of Israel starts to form. From this point forward. Okay? Now, all right. Verse 13. And there was no bread in all the land, for the famine was very sore, so that the land of Egypt and all the land of Canaan fainted by reason of the famine. So now it's getting really bad, right? It's getting worse than it already was. It's getting really bad. You're going to see how bad here in a second. And Joseph gathered up all the money that was found in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan for the corn which they bought, and Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house. Okay, so what's he saying here? All these people round about, they have spent everything they had for this grain, for this to sustain them, right? It's done got that bad. It's got this famine that's not just a famine of them not being able to eat, not having food, but what's it turned into now? It's turned into a serious hardship. The famine was so bad that most of them probably couldn't even work, right? You say, well, why couldn't they work? Well, they probably could work, but they weren't getting paid for their work, okay? And so now they've all, it says in Canaan, and it even mentions Egypt. Now all these people, they have given all their money, right? And guess what's still going on? The famine, right? So look what happens next. 15. And when the money failed in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, all the Egyptians came unto Joseph and said, give us bread, for why should we die in thy presence, for the money faileth? Right there, it just confirms what I just told you. That's what it means when they're saying the money's failed. They have no more money, right? Nobody. And Joseph said, give your cattle, and I will give for you for your cattle if money fail. Now, so what's happening now? They're going to run out of money. So now he's saying, okay, bring your cattle in here. You can trade your cattle for this food. Right? And that's what they end up doing, isn't it? They end up starting. They've run out of money, but now they're going to start trading off their livestock. Okay? Verse 17. And they brought their cattle unto Joseph, and Joseph gave them bread in exchange for horses, and for the flocks, and for cattle of the herds, and for the asses. And he fed them with bread for all their cattle for that year. All right? So all that cattle that lasted them that year, didn't it? They had enough for that year. All right? Now, let's go on to 18. When that year was ended, they came unto him the second year, and said unto him, We will not hide it from my Lord how that our money is spent. My Lord also hath our herds of cattle. There is not aught left in the sight of my Lord but our bodies and our lands. They're getting desperate, ain't they? Their money's gone. Their cattle's gone. And what are they saying? All we have left is ourselves and our land. Right? I'm going to throw something in here real quick. They done got to the place where they're ready just to sell themselves for something to make bread. Right? And we read this story, and yes, this is history of who? Don't dare say the church. This is history of the nation of Israel, right? But guess what? This will take place again. During the tribulation. During that tribulation period, this will happen again. It says a man will give a day's wage for a loaf of bread. What do you think's next? How many loaves of bread do you think you're going to buy? Huh? It's coming to come back again. So here they are. They're doing this. This is all we got left, dude. All right. 19, he says, Wherefore shall we die before thine eyes, both we and our land? Buy us and our land for bread, and we and our land will be servants unto Pharaoh, and give us seed, that we may live and not die, that the land be not desolate. Right? So what did they say? All right, we're willing to give ourselves and our land. They said, please, just give us some seed. Right? What are they wanting to do? Raise crops. You're getting ready to find out Joseph's got a big plan. After they said that, he comes up with a plan for them, right? So now, what's this showing here? It's showing that Pharaoh is going to own it all, isn't he? Pharaoh is going to be in control of all this land, right? Okay. And Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh. For the Egyptians sold every man his field because the famine prevailed over them. So the land became Pharaoh's. And as for the people, he removed them to cities from one end of the borders of Egypt even to the other end thereof. Only the land of the priests bought he not. For the priest had a portion assigned them of Pharaoh, and did eat their portion which Pharaoh gave them, wherefore they sold not their lands. Okay? So now he's taken the land, and what's he done? He's moved all the people into cities. Right? And these priests, we know these priests, what they are. They were pagan priests. They were the priests of all the, Egypt had who knows how many gods. Right? And these priests, he couldn't take their land. Why? Because Pharaoh had deeded them, basically, that portion of land that was theirs, right? Okay? I'll just throw that in there so we can keep up together. Okay. 23. Then Joseph said unto the people, Behold, I have bought you this day and your land for Pharaoh. Lo, here's your seed for you, and ye shall sow the land. What land? The land that they just sold to Pharaoh. Huh? They're going to sow seed. And it shall come to pass in the increase that ye shall give the 5th part unto Pharaoh, and 4 parts shall be your own, for seed of the field, and for your food, and for them of your households, and for food for your little ones. So what are we looking at here? We're looking at the first really governmental institution of what? Taxes. That word we all like. Taxes. do? Well, they've sold their land to Pharaoh, and what's happening here? We're going to give you this seed, and you're going to raise crops, right? And then he divided it up into 5 parts, right? He said, well, the first part, or 1 part, you're going to give to who? Pharaoh. The other 4 parts, you're going to feed your family with. So what's that part there? Even though Pharaoh owns the land, you would think they would be getting paid with money, wouldn't you? No, they're getting paid with what? Food. They're getting paid with food. And so that first part is given to Pharaoh, and the rest of it they can keep for themselves on their own land, which ain't theirs anymore. And it shall come to pass in the increase, 25. And they said, Thou hast saved our lives. Let us find grace in the sight of my Lord, and we will be Pharaoh's servants.
Question. Said they moved them all to the cities. Where are they planting the seed?
On the land that they sold Pharaoh. So they're traveling from the city back out to the land that they did own, and they're planting these harvests. But they're actually living in the cities. And they said, Thou hast saved our lives. Let us find grace in the sight of my Lord, and we will be Pharaoh's servants. You know, and I'm not talking bad about these people at all. Because when you get hungry enough, when your spouse, your wife, your children, when your family is hungry enough, you will do whatever you have to do, won't you? You will. And so all this worked out for who though? Yes, they're getting food. Yes, they're going to be saved, but they've lost all their land. And Pharaoh is going to be more wealthy than he ever was before. Amen. It's kind of a sad situation, if you ask me. And Joseph made it a law over the land of Egypt unto this day that Pharaoh should have the 5th part, except the land of the priests only, which became not Pharaoh's. Everything, right? So, we see this here. Yes, is this wisdom on Joseph's part? Why, sure, he come up with this. I mean, it was a great plan, wasn't it? That's what businessmen do, isn't it? They come up with a plan, and was it a great plan? Absolutely. The people get their food, and Pharaoh gets more land. He gets richer, right? It still don't seem right to me, but that's how it works out anyway, right? So, let's get to this other point. Which really and truly, listen, this is just another part of God's plan. Okay? I need to throw that in there before I lose everybody. Right? His people are becoming a nation here in Egypt. Right? Now Pharaoh has just become more powerful in the land by owning all the land, right? And this is going to play a part later on down the road. When this Pharaoh dies, a new Pharaoh comes in to control, right? And this new Pharaoh don't know Joseph. This new Pharaoh sees all these, let's call them Hebrews, all these Hebrews over here in the land of Goshen as a threat. And I don't want to jump ahead, but I feel like I need to explain what's happening here before y'all think. This is a part of God's plan. Okay? It's all a part of God's plan. What? To put them in bondage later on. Right? Because just like people do, they end up, they fall in with the Egyptians, right? And you know what else they do? They start probably acting a lot like the Egyptians, right? You say, well, no, they don't. Do they not? I I mean, here God leads them out with Moses, and what happens? Not very far at all down the road. They're complaining. Yes. I mean, they're making idols. That's a good point there. They're making idols. They're complaining. They're saying, man, we had it made in Egypt. Yeah, we had to work and build all this stupid junk. But man, we had all kinds of food to eat, right? We could eat anything. We had stuff, right? They learned idolatry in Egypt. You know, Moses went up on the mountain to talk to God and comes back down, and here they are dancing naked around a golden calf. Huh? And then Aaron has the gall to say, I throw the gold in the fire and out come this calf. You know what I mean? Knowing good and well that he made it. He made the calf. Anyway, this is all a part of God's plan here, okay? We see this, and it is sad to me for the Egyptians. But it's all a part of God's plan. They're going to become a big nation, and they're going to become a threat, and it's all going to lead up to them what? Having to lean totally on God later on down the road. Okay? All right, let's go to 27. And Israel dwelt in the land of Egypt, in the country of Goshen, and they had possessions therein, and grew and multiplied exceedingly. Here is the nation being formed into the nation. Okay? Here they are. They had possessions. They were coming out like fat rats during this famine too. Why? Because God was taking care of them, right? And Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 17 years. So he was 130 when he got there, so he died at what? 147. Right? So he was there for 17 years. So the whole age of Jacob was 147 years, and the time drew nigh that Israel must die. That's Jacob. And he called his son Joseph and said unto him, If now I have found grace in thy sight, put, I pray thee, thy hand under my thigh, and deal kindly and truly with me. Bury me not, I pray thee, in Egypt. Now look, Jacob knows he is at the end of it. And what does he want? He does not want to be buried in Egypt. He wants to be buried in the land that he knows God is going to give to his people. Right? So what's he do? He says, Joseph, now that hand under the thigh, all that, this is just an oath, basically. Okay? That's all that was. Him making his son. Basically, he's making his son promise here. When I die, you're not going to bury me here. You're going to take me somewhere else. Okay? That's basically what's happening here. Okay? We're going to have time to be good. We'll get into the next chapter. Okay. Unless y'all got some questions. But I will lie with my fathers, and thou shalt carry me out of Egypt and bury me in their burying place. And he said, I will do as thou hast said. Now, this burying place, we'll find out, I think it's either in 48 or 49, he's wanting to be buried where? Where Abraham. Huh? Yes, but in that specific place. Remember when Abraham, when he bought that little place, he bought that little cave, and he buried his wife in there, right? And then he was buried there. That's where Jacob winds up being buried. It's in that place. Okay? So look, here it is. He says, and he said, Swear unto me, and he sware unto him, and Israel bowed himself upon the bed's head. All right. Jacob still had faith. What? That he would be back in the land of promise. His people, his descendants, his children, right, would be back in the land of Canaan. Okay? Now, has anybody got a question on anything? Or a comment? Maybe you've seen something I did. Which is very possible. Alright, I say we go on to the next one. What do you think? So, 48. Here we go. And it came to pass, after these things, after what things? All that just took place in chapter 47, all right? Behold, thy father is sick, and he took with him his 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. These are Joseph's 2 sons, okay? Now, well, let's read some more. And one told Jacob and said, Behold, thy son Joseph cometh unto thee. And Israel strengthened himself and sat up on the bed. He got himself together, okay? And Jacob said unto Joseph, God Almighty appeared unto me at Luz in the land of Canaan and blessed me. Do you remember when that happened? We read about that. Remember? And said unto me, Behold, I will make thee fruitful and multiply thee, and I will make of thee a multitude of people, and will give this land to thy seed after thee for an everlasting possession. And now thy 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, which were born unto thee in the land of Egypt before I came unto thee into Egypt, are mine, as Reuben and Simeon. They shall be mine. And thy issue, which thou begatst after them. So wait a minute, what's he saying here? He's just saying it's your offspring, okay? Shall be thine, and shall be called after the name of their brethren in their inheritance. And as for me, when I came from Paddan, Rachel died by me in the land of Canaan, in the way, when yet there was but a little way to come unto Ephrath. And I buried her there in the way of Ephrath, the same is Bethlehem. Okay, so now they've told Joseph, Jacob's sick, he's dying. Joseph brings his 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, right? And so now, what does Jacob do? He says, Behold, he says, verse 5, and now thy 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, which were born unto thee in the land of Egypt before I came unto thee. No, that's not what I wanted to read. Where does it say they'll be mine? Yes, I'm sorry. Now thy 2 sons, and Ephraim and Manasseh, which are born of thee in the land of Egypt, before I came to thee, are mine. Right? As Reuben and Simeon, they shall be mine. What's he saying here? He is basically adopting his grandsons, right? He's not taking them from Joseph. He's just including them into what? Into this promise. He's including them into the promise that when they become a nation, right? They will have what? An inheritance in the nation. Okay? Now, this is going to sound kind of weird because we already know there's already 12 sons, don't we? Right? Does the Bible always just talk about the 12 tribes of Israel, right? We already know there's 12 tribes. But as you go on down, and even in Numbers, in Kings, when it talks about the 12 tribes, you know, there's certain places where it includes what? Ephraim and Manasseh, right? In the 12 tribes. Even when you get down to the book of Revelation, the tribe of Dan is left plumb out in the book of Revelation. But Manasseh is put in there. And then whose name is put in there? Joseph, right? Joseph in place of Ephraim, okay? I hope I'm not confused. This makes sense. So what has took place? And then even when you read the Old Testament, it talks about the northern kingdom, right? Remember Israel, as they would come into the land, they split off into two, right? There was a northern kingdom and there was a southern kingdom. And every time you read about the northern kingdom, it always referred to that kingdom as what? Ephraim. Why? Because Ephraim was the biggest tribe at that time. Right? They were the most powerful tribe at that time. Okay? Y'all remember when they come to the Jordan River and they crossed the river and they was going in and then they get over to this place and all of a sudden you remember the two tribes came to Moses and said, listen, man, we got cattle and that place on the other side is a good place to raise cattle. Remember, y'all remember that story? And Moses said, all right, that'll be y'all's inheritance, but your men's going to come with us and continue fighting the battles, right? And then when they got done fighting, they went back, right? So that was Manasseh. Half of them stayed on that side, and half of them stayed on this side, okay? This will make sense in just a second. Okay, so if you count this up, how many names do you get? What, 13? 14 names? So how are there 12 tribes? Okay, so when he includes them in this, what did they do? Ephraim and Manasseh took Joseph's place. Okay? So now we're down to what? 13. You say, well, that still don't make it right. There's 13, there's only 12. Okay, so when they finally get into the land and they're finally dividing up, right? They're dividing everything up. But who do the Levites become? They are the priests. The Levites do not inherit any land. They just inherit cities. They're kind of, and Simeon is pretty much absorbed by all the rest of the tribes. So now that's why Ephraim and Manasseh are always included in the 12 tribes of Israel, because they took Joseph's place and the Levites did not inherit any land. Does that make any sense? Yeah. If I lost everybody? All right. So, all right. So here he is. He's telling him all this stuff here. Okay. Now, verse 8. And Israel beheld Joseph's sons and said, who are these? And Joseph said unto his father, they are my sons, whom God hath given me in this place. And he said, bring them, I pray thee, unto me, and I will bless them. Now the eyes of Israel were dim for age, so that he could not see. And he brought them near unto him, and he kissed them and embraced them. And Israel said unto Joseph, I had not thought to see thy face, and lo, God hath showed me also thy seed. Here he's tickled to death, ain't he? He said, I didn't think I'd ever see you again, and now God has blessed me enough to even get to see your sons, okay? And Joseph brought them out from between his knees, and bowed himself with his face to the earth. And Joseph took them both, Ephraim in his right hand toward Israel's left hand, and Manasseh in his left hand toward Israel's right hand, and brought them near unto him. And Israel stretched out his right hand and laid it upon whose head? Ephraim's, who was the younger, and his left hand upon Manasseh's head, guiding his hands wittingly, for Manasseh was the firstborn. All right, now look at here. Joseph placed them right to where when Jacob or Israel put his hands out to bless him, the oldest one would be on the right and the younger on the left, right? Well, then what happened? As he went to do it, Joseph crossed his hands. Right? So what is he doing? Well, it's the same thing God's been doing all along. He chose who? He chose Abel over what? Cain, the younger brother. Even here, when he gets down to Isaac, who he chooses Isaac over Ishmael, the younger son, right? And it just continues on like that, right? Because what's that show? Because God's plan ain't always man's plan, right? And so here we see he swapped hands. So what's he getting ready to do? God is going to bless the younger a little bit more than the older again, right? Okay? Now, where was that? 15. Okay. And he blessed Joseph and said, God, before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac did walk, the God who fed me all my life long unto this day, the angel which redeemed me from all evil, bless the lads and let my name be named on them, and the name of my fathers, Abraham and Isaac, and let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth. So what's he doing now? He is placing this blessing. The what? Sounds like the Abrahamic blessing, doesn't it? On these two boys also, right? Okay? And he goes on. I like how he put that. The God who has fed me all my life long, right? He knows where everything comes from. The angel which redeemed me. Now this angel is just a type of who? Christ. It's not an angel he's talking about. That angel didn't redeem him. Christ is the one that redeemed him, right? Right?
Yeah.
Remember when they was wrestling?
Yeah.
He called him an angel, but who was it? It was the pre-incarnate Christ. Okay? Christ. This is the first time, one of the first times you'll ever see that him pointed to as what? The Redeemer. Huh?
Yeah.
He's our Redeemer, isn't he?
Yeah.
Or he's mine. Y'all can be sad about it if you want to. He's my Redeemer, amen? I'm tickled pink that he's my Redeemer.
Yes.
And here's the first time. Guess what? Jacob was tickled pink that he was his Redeemer also. Amen? So now he says, look, Abraham, Isaac, and let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth. And when Joseph saw that his father laid his right hand upon the head of Ephraim, it displeased him. And he held up his father's hand to remove it from Ephraim's head unto Manasseh's head. And Joseph said unto his father, not so, my father, for this is the firstborn. Put thy right hand upon his head. And his father refused and said, I know it, my son, I know it. Right? You say, well, I thought he was blind. He is. He was. He couldn't hardly see. How is he doing this? He is trusting in God because this blessing comes from God, right?
Amen.
And so he says, look here. I know it. He also shall become a people, and he also shall be great. But truly his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his seed shall become a multitude of nations. And he blessed them that day, saying, in thee shall Israel bless, saying, God make thee as Ephraim and Manasseh. And he set Ephraim before Manasseh. Okay? This is why I took so much time explaining what I explained. Later on, Ephraim, people are going to refer to that northern kingdom as Ephraim. Why? Because he has grown into this mighty, mighty nation himself, right? Yes, there's there's 9 more tribes up there with him, but he's the biggest, okay? But he didn't leave Manasseh out. Manasseh still become a big, big part of the 12 tribes, right? Even though half of them stayed on the other side, they still become a big part of this, okay? So this is them being included in this Abrahamic blessing and them becoming a part of the 12 tribes of Israel, okay? Now, well, it's kind of sad though, isn't it, that here they are. We know what happens later on. We know they end up splitting off into 2 tribes, don't we? right? They split off into two tribes. Man, they're headbanging down there. I tell you what, I mean, they're really, we might want to go check this out. But they split off into two, right? Two tribes stay down in the southern part, the other 10 go up. And there's so many people, I'm going to throw this in there because I want y'all to understand. There's so many people that talk about these lost tribes of Israel, right? Well, I'm going to tell you, there are no lost tribes of Israel. If there was, how could God pick out 144,000 at the end, and 12,000 of them are what? Out of every tribe. Except Dan. Dan was left out. Why? Because Dan was the first tribe to fall into adultery. Idolatry. Well, they probably did the other two, but it was idolatry. Okay? We'll find that out later on. So, there's no lost tribes, guys. When people start talking about the lost tribes of Israel, don't believe that crap. God knows where they're at. Right?
Yes.
Matter of fact, more than likely the Israeli people know where they're at. Mm-hmm. So, man, they're howling like dogs. They done got charismatic on us out here. I ain't putting up with it. Tell you what's true. Alright, now, so, alright, just to throw in another little thing about Ephraim, what's his name mean? It means fruitful. And he definitely becomes fruitful later on, okay? Now, 21. And Israel said unto Joseph, Behold, I die, but God shall be with you, and bring you again into the land of your fathers. Moreover, I have given to thee one portion above thy brethren, which I took out of the hand of the Amorite with my sword and with my bow. He's given his son Joseph a double portion, right? Now, like I said, when it comes down to the tribes, you don't, sometimes in the Old Testament it lists Joseph as a part of the 12 tribes. Sometimes it doesn't, right? Sometimes it lists Ephraim and Manasseh in Joseph's place, okay? And by the time we get to the book of Revelation, it don't even mention Ephraim no more. It puts Joseph back in there, but it still includes Manasseh. And it drops down. Okay? So that's how we keep the 12 tribes all the way through the Bible. Alright? Now, here he is. Jacob's dying. He's dying in Egypt. Right? But where's his heart? His heart is still in that promised land. Right? He's done made Joseph swear to him he ain't going to bury him there. And look what he said here. He said in 21, And Israel said unto Joseph, Behold, I die, but God shall be with you, and what? Bring you again into the land of your fathers. He still held on to the promise that God made. And you know that promise is just as good even in this age of grace that you and I live in as it was then. Because this promise will be fulfilled. When the times of the Gentiles is fulfilled and you and I are raptured out of here, that next 7 years is what? God just getting his remnant of people back. Right? And then what? The millennial reign happens. They get the king. He comes back to earth. They get the kingdom and they have their land and their king. So, We already know when it's gonna happen, don't we? It's gonna happen after we leave here. Well, actually, when we come back at the end, that's when they get their land. Anyway, okay, that's all we got time for tonight. I was gonna keep on going. All right, so has anybody got a question? Please, if I confuse you with the 12 tribes, speak up now. But I needed y'all to understand because you're going to see 14 names and wonder why there's only 12 tribes. So that's why. Joseph was dropped out to start with. His two sons was put in his place. Okay? Later on, Levi does not inherit any land, so that brings us back to what? 12. Does that make sense? That's a little bit simpler. I went the long way around the first time. Okay? So has anybody got anything?
Who are the 12 tribes?
I'm not telling you.
Then I'm not writing it down.
Oh, just go back to, let's see, let's go back to, I think it's 46, yeah, 46. It talks about Jacob's family there at the end of 46. And it starts listing, there's 70 names here, but you pick out the first names, right? Or if you want to wait till we get to chapter 49, you're going to get the list, the whole list in chapter 49. Because each one of them get a blessing. Okay?
And 49.
49.
That's
Yes.
next Wednesday.
Yep, or you can read it ahead of time if you want to. They actually start in verse 3. It starts with, it goes Reuben, then it goes Simeon and Levi, then it goes Judah, then it goes on down to somebody else, Zebulun, Issachar, Dan, and it keeps on going. These are the actual sons of Jacob. Gad, Naphtali, and all that. So that's all in 49. But, all right, has anybody got anything? Okey dokey.
So,
Well,
why was Joseph dropped?
huh?
Why was Joseph dropped?
Well, I say he was dropped just because it depends on what part of the promise we're talking about, whether he is included in the 12 tribes and one of his sons is dropped, or one of them is included and he is dropped. When it talks about it in the book of Revelation, it's talking about, is that the land promise? When it's talking about the promise, like prophecy, it includes Joseph. And it usually drops Ephraim. Alright? But now when it's talking about the promises of the land, Joseph's name is dropped and his two sons are put in his place. Why? Because they are the ones that got the land. Right? Not Joseph. Okay? So prophetic stuff is usually Joseph. The things that deal with the nation and the land, it's usually his two sons that's not listed.
Could it also be because he was still a slave, or not necessarily a slave, but he still belonged to Pharaoh? Because he never did get free from Pharaoh. I mean, he
Well, that's what I'm saying. He never went.
Right.
Well, none of these guys did. This is 400 years later before anybody goes. But that's why Jacob said, your sons are mine. He's wanted to include them in this inheritance that's coming later on. So really and truly, that's how Joseph gets his double portion. He's got two sons.
Yeah.
Both of them get a portion of the promise. So Joseph, I guess you could say spiritually, gets a double portion through his sons.
Okay.
Does that make any sense at all?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay. So, all right. Anybody else? Okie dokie. Bob, you feel like praying? All right, let's